This is to help you with your public service announcement, and it is your scripting template. In other words, it's supposed to help you through it. So, public service announcement planning template, the title of your PSA. Consider giving your PSA a clever title that will make it memorable to viewers. Like the titles of books or movies, PSA titles are important for engaging viewers. An engaging title can even bring viewers to your presentation by itself. So this, you can give it a working title now if you want to, or you can wait until it's done. Because like books or movies, sometimes you don't know what you want to call it until it's done. It's almost something that, because you want to make sure that your title fits your PSA, but you don't quite know what your PSA is going to be yet, so you might want to wait. But if you want to give it a working title, go right ahead. Okay, next is the topic of your PSA. I gave you 3 choices, but you really only chose 2. Either you're educating fishermen or you're informing the general public. Remember that you're educating fishermen because we had the fishermen on the Saginaw River who caught the sturgeon and didn't know that it had to be put directly back into the river. So a PSA for fishermen that perhaps that we could share with Mike Avery for him to put on his outdoors program about why it is that we don't catch sturgeon and why we have this very small sturgeon season, and it has to do with the fact that the sturgeon population has been decimated and it takes them such a long time to procreate or make more sturgeon, and so they need to understand that because most fishermen fish walleye or muskie or perch, and it doesn't take 20 years for those fish to make new fish. So they need to be educated that if they catch a sturgeon, they need to put it back. But if they want to catch a sturgeon, that there's times when they can catch sturgeon, and we need to talk to them about the sturgeon fishing season. Conversely, if you want to just inform the general public, then that would be for everybody. That would be what you would tell your mom or your Aunt Susie or somebody at the store, somebody about just about the sturgeon, what it's gone through, what we're trying to do now to bring the sturgeon population back. So your subcategories are your notebook entries. So if you remember on pages 82, 83, 84, and 85, I'm missing a page, you have written down what you thought you needed to put or about each section or each chunk that we talked about. So remember that first we talked about sturgeon as a living fossil. And then we talked about the history of sturgeon populations. Then we talked about the life cycle of the sturgeon. Then we talked about what has been done to help the sturgeon. And lastly, we talked about sturgeon in the news. So these should be your subcategories. We talked about 5 different things. You may choose 4 of the 5 to talk about in your PSA. When planning your PSA, organizing the categories of facts, statistics, and statements and opinions that you collect on your primary issue into subcategories lends structure to your final piece. For example, if your primary issue is poverty, or in our case, sturgeon, the content that you collect might be organized into categories related to poverty in Asia, Africa, South America, and the United States. And for our purposes, you want people to know about where the sturgeon is. Why is it important? It's a living fossil. It's lived as long, it outlives the dinosaurs. However, in less than 100 years, we decimated the population. People need to know what happened to the sturgeon populations. Not only that we overfished them, but that we fragmented their habitat by building dams, and so on and so forth. They further need to understand, and this is very important for everyone to understand, the life cycle of the sturgeon. While many people understand that the sturgeon is a long-lived fish, meaning that it lives to up to 150 years, most people don't know that it takes a very long time for sturgeon to reproduce to make more sturgeon. Many people don't know what's been done to help the sturgeon, especially because that's recently, and then sturgeon in the news. That would be contemporary information like the fishermen that caught the sturgeon on the Saginaw River or the fish that were stocked into the Tittabawassee River, those type of things. So in one sentence, summarize your main idea you're hoping to communicate with your PSA. Remember that PSAs are someplace between 30 seconds and a minute. So you have a lot of information that you need to get covered or explained in a very short amount of time. So it's really important that you are succinct, okay? So succinct, you're you say everything you need to say in the least amount of words possible. Okay, so thinking through primary purpose of your PSA, which is to either educate about the sturgeon or educate fishermen, will help you make important decisions about the facts, fonts, images, and music to include in your final project. Here are 2 examples. After watching my PSA, I want readers to know that life is very different in developed countries than it is in developing countries. Or, after watching my PSA, I want readers to know that Salem Middle School is a fun place to work and learn. So you need to decide what it is that you want people to know after viewing your PSA. Now think about the emotion that you're trying to communicate. Some of you want your viewer to be motivated to help the sturgeon, or maybe you want them to have an understanding. So if you're having trouble coming up with the emotion, it's perfectly fine to look online and look for a list of emotions. Sometimes seeing a list will allow you to say, oh, that's the one I want, instead of having to come up with it for no reason. And why does this emotion make sense for your PSA? Why do you want people to feel motivated? Why do you want people to feel guilty? Why do you want people to feel scared? Those are the things that you need to think about. Every PSA is designed to persuade viewers to take action on an important issue. As a result, every PSA must attempt to make viewers feel specific emotions. Thinking through how you want your viewers to feel early in the planning process will help you make better choices for your final project. So think about that. People are driven by their emotions. They will do something because they feel guilty without really thinking about it logically. So emotions are a really good way to get people's attention.